Hello and welcome to more High Peak. Now, big SUVs have always been very expensive. Expensive to buy, expensive to run, and expensive to fix. But what if I told you you could pick up a proper luxury SUV for the same price as, well, one of these, or one of these? It'd be hard to believe, wouldn't it? But I swear that's true, and I'm going to prove it to you today. For just a few £1,000s, you can pick up these cars that were once favoured by celebrities, footballers, business execs. But here's the thing, while the prices might be quite low, temptingly low, the risk is still quite high, as I'm about to prove to you. Just because these cars are cheap to buy, that doesn't mean they're cheap to run, so you have to be very careful when buying one. So today we're going to be going through some of the best SUVs I've ever bought for about £3,000 or less. We'll talk about what I bought, what they like to drive, what went wrong, and what to look out for. Let's get started. First up on the list then is a BMW X5. Now, I've always loved the X5. Ever since it came out in 1999, I've always been slightly obsessed with them. The first X5 I ever bought was way back in 2008 or 2009. It was an E53 3-litre petrol in topaz blue with a beige interior, and I love that car. I'd probably have it today, to be honest. Anyway, the one you're about to see is a 2007 3-litre diesel, and it was quite cheap. I think I paid just £2 for it. Anyway, you're about to see. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, we're currently down in the lovely village of Castlecombe in Wiltshire on a beautiful wet day. We were down here doing some filming and I've just been offered what could be the perfect camera car. You know, I said in my Discovery 3 video recently that that might be the perfect camera car. Well, that wasn't the answer really. The car I've been offered is a BMW X5 from 2007. So importantly, it's a 7-seater, which is exactly what I need. It's got the split tailgate, which is another thing that I needed. And it's a 3-litre diesel, so it should be quite economical. And I think, I don't want to sound a bit naive here, but I think it should be a bit more reliable than the Discovery 3. The car's about 2 hours from here, further down south, and we've got a bit of a storm coming, and it's heading to the southwest, so I think we're going to be driving right into the eye of it. But we're not made of chocolate, are we? Can survive a bit of rain. The guy said he only wants £2,000 for this X5, so it sounds quite cheap. The cheapest on the internet I've seen starts at around £5,000, so I'm a little bit wary. He says it's alright though. He's had the EGR blanked off and remapped or whatever. It's done around 150,000 miles, and he's had it for about 8 years, and it's just been the family car really. He said that he's looked after it quite well, so we'll go and see, shall we? What a horrible day it is today. Anyway, we're about an hour and 45 minutes away from the X5. And you might think this is a bit of a waste of time and money really, buying a car specifically to use as a camera car. But I've thought long and hard about this and actually think it'll be really useful. I'm always trying to improve the quality of these videos, and I think with the addition of a vehicle like this, things will go up a notch. Do you remember when you'd watch an old Top Gear episode from a few years ago? They'd always use L322 Range Rovers as tracking cars. There'd always be somebody, usually a couple of people, in the boot of the L322 with the top part of the tailgate open. They'd stick the camera gear out of the boot and get some really nice shots. And that's the sort of thing I'm looking for. For many years now I've just used a GoPro stuck to the boot of the car in front, and that's alright, but it does limit the kind of shots you can get. This should be a bit more versatile. Originally I was looking for a cheap Land Rover Discovery because that has the split folding tailgate, and crucially it's got 7 seats, or a lot of them do anyway. And that means one of my colleagues can sit back there on the 6th or 7th seat, buckled in all safe, and just tilt and turn the camera whilst getting the shots. Without those 2 rear seats back there, I'm not sure the legality of it all. It's fine for the BBC, I'm sure, with multi-million-pound budgets, but for little old me, we've got to be a little bit more careful. So that's what I'm thinking, and that should be the easiest way to get these kinds of shots without applying for silly permits and all that sort of stuff. This is safe and legal. We're filming much more content now out on the roads. We're doing 3 videos a week, which takes quite a lot of work. So it's always a bit of a stress making sure we've got an additional car to use to throw all our luggage in and use as a camera car. But this, if we use this specifically for this job, well not this, but the X5, then we don't need to worry anymore. It just makes my life a little bit easier. Plus this era of X5, known as the 70, which ran from 2007, they're quite reliable. I don't want to speak too soon, but they are generally not too bad. The engine and gearboxes are okay, they haven't got complicated air suspension which always fails, and crucially it's 4-wheel drive, so if we do end up in the Alps or in the Arctic Circle with a decent set of tyres, then it should get us out of some bother. Right, well here is my £2,000 BMW X5. I was going to show this to you yesterday, but by the time I got there, the storm, I can't remember the name of it, Kieran was it? Some sort of bad storm was bashing the southwest of the UK, so when I got there were wheelie bins on the side, roads were flooded, there were a couple of trees in the road, it wasn't great. So I thought rather than get completely soaked wet through, I thought I'd just jump in the car and drive it up north, and then I'd do this walk around bit when the weather got better. So here we are, 24 hours later, and it's finally stopped raining. Overall, I'm really pleased with the car. I think it's the best £2,000 I've spent in some time. Would you like a quick tour? Well, here it is then. It's a late 2007. It's an SE, not an M Sport, which is why it's got those tiny wheels on it. But I still think, I mean, it makes me feel a bit old this now, but I remember when they came out, and I think it still looks like quite a modern car, really. It could do with, you could probably finish this sentence for me, could do with some new reg plates, and it could do with the headlamps buffing. They're a bit cloudy. I think they'll come back though. They'll certainly improve anyway. Looks quite cool though, doesn't it? The previous owner told me a little bit about it. They'd owned it for about 8 years, him and his wife, and it had just been used as a family car. But anything it ever needed, it had. So for example, last year it had 4 brand new Goodyear tyres fitted. It had the gearbox serviced, it had the rear diff serviced, it's had regular oil changes. It's got both keys. Apart from it needing a very good clean, it's all pretty good. Let me show you around it then. So we've got a crack in the windscreen up there, which isn't the end of the world. It isn't even an MOT failure, that really. As it spreads, I think I'll have to replace it one of these days. We've got some damage here to this side step, but again, for what I'm going to use this car for, I'm not really that bothered. Round the back, we've got some damage here to the top of the tailgate. The towing eye cover's missing. But it's really not bad, is it, for a 16-year-old car? It looked better straight away with the proper clean. Some fresh reg plates, buff the headlamps, and then see how we get on. Moving inside, again, it just needs a very good clean. Because I put the previous owner on the spot a little bit, because I didn't give them much notice, they didn't have a chance to clean it and they were quite embarrassed. Which I told them not to be, because it really doesn't matter. I'm going to send it for a full valet anyway, so it didn't matter at all. But yeah, it is quite grubby. So we've got here, now I don't really do aftermarket stuff, but the previous owners replaced the centre screen here with this aftermarket unit. And it all works all right. I think it's like an Android system, but someone's put like the BMW skin on it, so it looks kind of like it should be there. But it's a big spec as well, this. I've got head-up display, I've got electronically adjustable steering column here. We've done 149,000 miles. But yeah, you see that's just not quite right. But it still works, and it's got Apple CarPlay and Bluetooth and all that sort of stuff. The heated seats get nice and hot. It's not a bad thing, is it? It's even got this rear screen here, which I've never seen before. So back in its day, this must have been quite the car. We've also got xenon lights. Powerful mirrors. That's a little fault that I found. The SOS system is faulty. So SOS call system failure. I couldn't care less about that, to be honest. I filled up the tank when I was down somewhere near, I don't know, in between Southampton and Bournemouth, somewhere around that area. And I filled it with V-Power because I'm odd and I always preach that. I filled it with V-Power diesel and it took 145 pounds, so must be quite a big tank. But I've done, I don't even know how many miles I've done. We've been averaging 27.7 miles per gallon. So not too bad really, is it? Yeah, so we've got this screen system here, which kind of does look like the BMW system, doesn't it? I don't know whether you can see that. Can you see that? It's a bit dark, isn't it? Anyway, what else can I show you? Got a 6-disc changer there, and there is loads and loads of service history. I think it'll be perfect for what I need it for. I think I might replace those struts. Yeah, ideal. Not much to see there then, is there really? Should we take it for a drive where it's a little bit warmer? Take the old X5 out for a spin. Oh. I hate this barrier. That was close. I very nearly then had an impaled X5. In fact, let me just lose this body warmer. There's my old SOS, with that worrying BMW bong of doom. I was really expecting this car to be clunky, loose. When I checked it out on Car Vertical, there were a few advisory items for the last few years with suspension components, bushes and things like that. So I thought every time you went over a bump in this, it would sound, you know, horrible sort of metal on metal knocking noise, but it's fine. It's actually really solid. I know I've mentioned this before, but I love this era of BMW. Everything's just really, really solid. It isn't the quickest thing in the world. I think it's 245 horsepower or something, but it's adequate. It's all right. The gearbox seems to work perfectly. In fact, everything I've tried works, which is quite unusual. You know, whenever I buy one of these cheap cars, especially one hundreds of miles from home, always in the back of my mind I think, there's a good chance that I won't make it home. I always think I'm going to end up on the hard shoulder of the M6 waiting for the AA to come and rescue me, but this wasn't the case. I've done about 300 miles in it now and it's been completely faultless. My heated seat, in fact, works a little bit too well. I paid just £2,000 for it because that's what the seller wanted for it. I'm sure I could have got one slightly cheaper if I'd gone to an auction or something, but you really don't know what you're buying. With this kind of thing, it was handy to chat to the previous owner while he told me what work he'd had done over the years. It's just a little bit of an insight into the car's history. But yeah, I haven't got a single warning light on. Everything's all right. I think the first job I'm going to do to it is run it down to my mechanics and leave it there for an oil and filter change. And I think I'll ask them to just check it over quickly and make sure everything's all right. Then I'll run it over to the lads at Tameside Valeting for a good clean, buff the headlamps, screw in some new reg plates, and then start using it for work. Let it pay for itself. Right then, I think that's all I can tell you for now, so let me catch up with you in a couple of days' time. See you then. And we're back in my £2,000 BMW X5, and I'm over the moon with it. After we last spoke, I took it down to my mechanics for an oil change and just a general check over. Before I did any serious miles on this, I just wanted to make sure that it was all alright. I was quietly optimistic though, because I'd already done a couple of hundred miles in it without a single problem. On the way to the mechanics, it was raining quite heavily, so I had my front wipers on full, and I tried to put the back wiper on. All of a sudden it got halfway, then stopped. Then I looked again and it just completely dropped. It was dangling down like a tail. So as I got there, I said, right, oil and filter, check it over, and 3 new wiper blades and a new rear wiper arm. I know it's quite a common fault with this era of X5. The bolt that holds it all together eventually goes rusty and the whole thing fails. Luckily, it isn't a big job, so I had that done. The very next day, my mechanic called me to say what a nice old car it was. They told me that the previous owner had obviously looked after it because there were a lot of new parts underneath. So at that point, I thought my theory was confirmed. This is a decent car. You really don't know what you're buying when you're buying a 16-year-old car for a couple of grand. It could go either way. So I just want to say a quick thank you to Nicola and Vaughan for getting in touch in the first place, and thanks for looking after your car so well. When it was done there, I took it over to the lads at Tameside Valeting. If you remember, it was quite grubby, so I left it there for a full valet, and I also asked them to clean and polish the headlamps. They'd completely clouded over and they were letting the car down, and I had my suspicions that with a good buff, they'd come back nice. The actual results were better than I expected. They now look like new. Then I got it back to work and fitted some new reg plates. I opted for an oversized rear, the same size as you'd find on a full-size Range Rover or Range Rover Sport, and I think it looks a whole lot better. I also decided to put my High Peak Autos plate on it. If you remember, this plate was on my 1995 SL320, but since that's now gone to its new home, I took the plate off that and put it on this. The good clean, the fresh private plates and the polished headlamps have really lifted this car. It's made a really big difference. Not that I'm out to impress anyone now, but this looks like a £10,000 car if this were to roll up, not a £2,000 one. I know it's just going to be used as a scruffy workhorse, but still, first impressions count, don't they? And now this is something that I'm actually quite proud of. In between all this, I ordered some brand new genuine BMW rubber mats for it, which you'll think I've lost the plot here when I tell you how much I paid for them. They cost me £90, 90. I know that's ridiculous and I could have found some cheaper ones, but they will help protect it. I think it's money well spent anyway, even if you disagree. You'll be pleased to hear too that this old X5 has already been earning its keep. Yesterday we went up to the Lake District to do an off-road video with my cheap Jeep Cherokee that I bought for just £500. Do you remember that car? Well anyway, I kind of threatened that I might take it off-road, and yesterday we did. And this was the perfect camera car. It came in really handy. We just chucked everything in the back, used it to take shelter because the weather was horrendous, used it to get some good shots. So all in all, it's already paying for itself. And I think, I don't want to speak too soon or anything, but I think this is £2,000 well spent. It should be, or it promises to be, a really decent workhorse. It drives really well, it's spacious and practical, and I've been getting the best part of 30 miles per gallon from it. I'm just hoping that if I continue to look after it properly, then there's no reason this shouldn't last me a good few years. And then I suppose if things are going alright, perhaps just replace it with a slightly newer one. That's it really. In case you're wondering where that X5 is today, we kept it for about 18 months as a film car, and on the whole it was reasonably reliable. I spent maybe £1,000 on it over that period, and it served us well. It took us all over the UK on many road trips. In fact, my editor Steve was gutted that I'd sold it. He'd nicknamed it, which makes me cringe a bit. I hate naming cars, I don't know why, it just annoys me. He'd named it Bertha, or was it Bertha? Bertha. Bertha. That's the only time I've said it. It's the only time I'm about to say it. Right, next on the list then was a very cheap Toyota Land Cruiser. I've always quite liked the Toyota Land Cruiser, and I got an email from a viewer down in London who'd bought this brand new in 1997. He'd owned it from new, and he'd have kept it, but thanks to new ULEZ rules, it was costing him £12.50 a day just to nip to the shops, so he had to get rid of it. So he emailed me, we agreed a price, and I went down to collect it. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today you join me at Kiel Services, and we're heading down south to pick up something which I'm sure you'll like. I fancied buying a boxy 90s Japanese four-wheel drive car for some time now, because sometimes when I get my monthly fuel bill through, sometimes it just isn't high enough. It's funny how things work, isn't it? Because lo and behold, out of the blue, I got an email from a guy in London asking if I wanted to buy his 1997 Toyota Land Cruiser Colorado, which he'd owned, listen to this, from new. He bought it brand new in 1997 and he's owned it ever since. He was planning to keep the car forever, but it's not ULEZ compliant, so every time he drives it, he's got to pay the Mayor of London £12.50 every single day. So he's decided just to cut his losses and buy something ULEZ compliant. I haven't actually seen the car yet because I live up north and he's in London, but I have seen photographs and I'm really excited. It's in a, I think it's called royal blue, but it's a really nice purpley colour. It has a nice leather interior, and this is the important thing which makes this car really rare, it's a petrol. It's a 3.4 litre petrol. I've agreed to buy this car for £3,000, which I know sounds like an awful lot of money for a 26-year-old car, but I'm thinking I might have to spend £1,000 on it, but it should be worth maybe £6,000 all done. And I really don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm half tempted just to keep it. I don't know why, but I just fancy one. Right then, enough talking. I suppose we better get on the road. Well, here we are then. Let's go and have a look around it. It's very rare that you find something like this that has just had one owner from new. That's what excites me really. I think with a very gentle little restoration I can get this looking mint. Once the wheels powder coating again, probably a buff. Obviously I'll service it, service the gearbox, put a new battery on it. This is probably the worst bit about it, so there's some damage here to this rear bumper. But I mean that's just hollow behind, so I'm pretty sure that'll just pull out and then we can repaint it. Want some new stickers, a new tyre cover. But it's very original. Right, let me go and get the keys. Got the keys. Now the battery will be flat and some of the tyres do need a little bit of air. Luckily I've brought everything with me, I'm all prepared today. It is nice and original though inside. It's a really good spec this as well. So we've got a full leather interior, automatic gearbox, heated seats, air conditioning. This really takes me back. My parents had cars like this when I was a kid. And parents of my friends had cars like this when I was a kid, so this is really taking me back. Look at the cup holders. It's really nice and clean as well actually. Oh, we've got a sunroof. I'm quite impressed really. It's a 7-seat model as well, and I can't remember if they were all 7-seat or not. They did do a short wheelbase. I mean the leather is starting to crack in places, but it is all original. Right, let's have a look under the bonnet. You might think that this looks very dirty under here, but, I mean it does to be fair, but it's completely original. The previous owner told me that the Toyota dealer that he bought this from in Park Lane told him or advised him never to jet wash under here. So what you're looking at here is 27 years worth of dust and grime. Why am I excited by this? The engine's a 3.4 litre V6, it's belt driven, the cam belts have been done, so what I'll do is give it a service the gearbox, service the diff, just give it a good check over really. I think that battery's going to be dead to be honest, so I think I'll stick a new battery on it. Thinking about it, I don't know why I've just closed the bonnet. I need to get it jump started and then put some air in these tyres. So I'll be back in 2 minutes. I'm fully equipped today, guys. Can they get my hands dirty? Now this hasn't actually been started since ULEZ came in, which was the end of August last year. So I'm just praying because it's a Toyota that it starts. Wish me luck. Well, we've got some lights in the ignition. Will it start? Of course it will. That engine's silky actually. I think I'll leave the booster back on for a minute actually. Something that I thought was quite cool was the previous owner told me that this is the original spare tyre. So it's 27 years old, this tyre. He's never been off-road in it. He's never had a tow bar on it. It's always just had light city use really. I think we'll put 34 PSI in it. In case you don't know, by the way, this is the Land Cruiser Colorado. They did two Land Cruisers, the full-size one, which in the UK was known as the Amazon, or the Colorado, which was the slightly smaller one. In different markets, this is called the Prado, but here, Colorado. Now you know. I don't want to get too close to the exhaust fumes here, but I had a quick look underneath this, and there's a bit of scabbiness, but it's nothing too serious, I don't think. Mainly around the fuel tank. What I'm going to do is get it up on a ramp, wire brush it all, and then Schultz it, or wax oil, or Lanagard it. That's what it's crying out for. But, oh, this is one thing I meant to show you actually. I was expecting this to be really rotten around the wheel arches, but it isn't at all. There's just no rust there whatsoever. I've got my trade plate, so what I'm going to do now is take it for a quick spin, and if everything's okay, then go back inside, do the deal, and then get on his way, get back up north. Right, this is going to be interesting. We've now got a fully inflated near side front tyre. We're very low on fuel, so I'm going to head to an S around the corner. I'm fully aware my handbrake might be locked on because it's been sat here for months. Oh, no, we're rolling, we're moving, we're all good. So my plan is, you forget with an older car like this, there are no driver aids at all, no parking sensors or anything. Make sure I don't run over a pedestrian. Driving this very gingerly so I don't take out someone's garden wall. My plan is to go and get some fuel. So far, I mean, this is just like any old Land Cruiser really. Just feels like it'll run forever and a day. Brakes are a little bit grindy. The previous owner did tell me as well that there was a little bit of a wheel wobble at sort of 60, 70 miles an hour, which could be a bit of a flat spot on the tyre, so it might want a couple of tyres. Nothing that we can't sort. Right now my biggest concern is the fact that I'm running on fumes in an unknown area. So far, and I'm only doing 20 miles an hour, so far so good. I really like this. I love the simplicity of this era of motor vehicle. My heated seats getting nice and warm. That was the first thing I turned on because I'm a big soft northerner. The engine sounds really nice. The brakes, not so much. I can see me quickly spending £1,000 on this car, but I think it's worth it. I can't wait to see this when it's transformed. When I've done a little bit of paint work, done the wheels, a couple of tyres, and then all the mechanicals. Then I think we need to take it on a road trip, don't we? Where do you fancy going? Let me know below in the comments. I'm all ears. I just want to say a big thank you to the previous owner for getting in touch because I really appreciate this. When I can go out there and actually meet the previous owners and have a conversation with them. That's the best part of my job. There aren't many good parts to my job, I'll admit, but that's one of them. He was telling me that he bought this brand new when his wife was pregnant with a second child. And it's just been a really solid, dependable family car. They've been all over Europe in it as well. He showed me a photo of it actually outside the San Siro Stadium. In fact, we could take it there, couldn't we? It's the San Siro. So it has been everywhere, this car, and it's never let them down. I hope this petrol station comes fairly soon because we are very low on fuel. He said as well, if it wasn't for the £12.50 a day ULEZ charge, there's no way he'd be selling it. It's a ridiculous piece of legislation that's just affected so many people's lives. Anyway, he was right though, I'm doing 50 miles an hour currently, and there is definitely a pronounced wheel wobble. This will be a fun drive up to Manchester, won't it? Bit of body roll there. Right, we could do with some premium fuel, couldn't we? I know the older stuff doesn't like the new ethanol stuff. Passenger side, right. And there we go, Supreme E5. That'll do. I don't advise this, I don't like doing this, but I think I'll leave it running. Try and put some charge into that battery. Well, that was expensive. It took £124. I got the receipt just so I could show people. I left it running and it hasn't brought on an engine light. I love this car already. I'm thinking this is an old 3.4 V6. It's going to do 18 miles per gallon, 19, maybe 20 if I'm steady. I mean, with the wheel wobble, I can't really do more than 50, so I'm getting max MPG from it. I've got a 3-hour drive now back up to my home in Cheshire, and then tomorrow I'll drive it to work. This is either just pure coincidence or the clock is ran off something else, because that clock is showing the exact right time. I'll have to change the time on the radio though, because it's only showing a 12-hour clock rather than a 24. I think anyone that shows the time in 12 hours, not 24, is a bit of a loser. I've got my trusty compass here, so we'll just head north, I think. I feel like Bear Grylls. It's amazing, isn't it, how much calmer you are as a driver when you've got some fuel in your tank. When you're running on fumes, it's a bit like range anxiety in an EV. You just panic. Under a bit of acceleration there, under a bit of load, there's what sounds like a belt noise. I'm hoping it's not going to snap on me. Some sort of auxiliary drive belt or something. Just pray this gets me home. It should do, shouldn't it? It's an old Land Cruiser. And we're back in the Land Cruiser. We're back up north. It made it here fine. It took me about 3.5 hours because traffic was bad on the M6. And I'll be honest with you, it was quite an unpleasant drive back. I've got some advice really. If you drive up and down the M6 for a living all day long, don't buy a 27-year-old Land Cruiser Colorado. Then again, I think you knew that already. I was stuck doing 50 miles an hour because I think the front two tyres have got flat spots from where it's been, sitting. Which means if you go any quicker than 50, you get an awful lot of wheel wobble. And I just thought, if they're old tyres, I didn't even check the date. If they're old tyres, I don't want to get a blowout. It was dark, cold, windy and miserable, and I thought I just need to take this steady and get back in one piece. And I did, so I can't be too hard on it. But I was going to say it was a silent drive back because my radio doesn't work. My aerial doesn't pop up. Not sure where it's hiding, but it's in there somewhere, I think. Anyway, that of course meant that it was quite a boring drive back. I had nothing to keep me company. The more time you spend in a car, the more you discover its faults. This, for example, when you floor it, it's got that noise, maybe like a belt noise. And also, can you hear, I don't know whether you can hear this or not, there's a terrible vibration everywhere. I think, because I've experienced this before with several cars, I think it might be my gearbox mounts, or engine mounts, or both. Those little rubber bushes that keep everything, from vibrating, I think they might have deteriorated because as you get a bit quicker, it's not great. In fairness, I don't think that's a big job, but it is something I need to address. Because the rest of the car, the engine and gearbox, they're so quiet and smooth. You really struggle to believe that it's 27 years old. I do like driving something like this though. It's a proper old-fashioned, old-school body-on-frame truck. Which of course means that it handles like one, in that it doesn't really handle at all. That's not what it's about though, is it? I used almost half a tank of fuel as well, so as I predicted, this isn't the most economical car on sale. I got to it this morning after being in it for 3.5, 4 hours, and it fired straight up. Well, actually, it did turn over for a couple of seconds longer than I would have liked, but it did fire straight up. So I'm thinking maybe, no, it needs a new battery, doesn't it? I was going to say I could put the battery on charge, but I think the cells will have died. So I'll stick a new battery on it first, and then get on with my to-do list. And my to-do list that was already quite long is now a little longer. Still, no regrets. I think that's about it. Not much more I can tell you at this point. I'm going to head down to my mechanics now and ask them to just crack on with it, basically. I will do another video with this. In fact, I might do a separate video just detailing its gentle restoration. I think I'll do that. It is nice to be back up in the sticks though with this car, because I feel like it's home. It just suits this setting far more than the suburbs of London, in my opinion. So I think that's about it. In case you're wondering where we're up to with the old Land Cruiser Colorado, that was filmed about 18 months ago. And do you know when it was finally finished? When it was finally fixed, it had all the work done? Yesterday. I picked it up from my mechanics, took it for a valet, and it's now fully done. So that's going to feature on a video on the main channel, so make sure you check that out. But it now looks amazing. You'd never believe it was a 28-year-old car. I'm really pleased with it. Next up then on the list, if you want an SUV that's a bit more car-like to drive, then you really must check out the Mark 1 VW Touareg. I really like these cars, and I bought this one for just £1,400, and it was the 3.2 litre petrol V6, and that engine's a gem. Sounds really good, actually. What happened next? Well, you may as well watch the video, actually. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. I know I say this all the time, I don't want to be the boy who cried wolf, but today I bought something very interesting. For just £1,500, I bought a Volkswagen Touareg with a 3.2 litre petrol V6. I didn't know these cars were so cheap now, so I couldn't really say no, even though, this might sound a bit weird, I'm not a massive fan of the Touareg. And on top of that, as always, I've got absolutely zero use for it, but I'm a sucker for a cheap car, especially one with a meaty engine. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong now, but I think this is the old VR6 engine, and it's a really good motor. They use the same 3.2 in the early Cayennes. If you don't know what I mean by Cayenne, and you're watching this in Essex, then of course I mean a Porsche Cayenne. Let me tell you how I came by this cheap Touareg then. The other day I got a call from Jimmy the Magician, and he said that his friend's got this Touareg for sale, 3.2 V6, it's a late 2003, it's done around 110,000 miles, and he's buying a brand new car. And he asked Jim if he knew any car traders that might be interested in it. Next thing, my phone goes, and I immediately said yes. Now, I haven't actually seen the car yet, I've bought it blind, which is probably a bit of a bad idea, but this job's all about trust, and I trust what Jimmy told me about it. Jimmy saw the car, he said it needs a couple of tyres and a bumper corner, but it presented itself quite well for a 21-year-old car. So I thought, why not? What could possibly go wrong? It's been dropped off for me on my car park, I haven't seen it yet, so I thought today I'd bring you guys along, and we can have a tour of it together. Are you excited? I am. Right, I'll see you there. Well, we're here. It's metallic red, which isn't the best colour to be honest, but £1,500, I can't really complain. It's got the small wheels, which on the bright side mean it'll be quite a comfortable ride, I imagine. Looks all right. It does look like an awful lot of car for £1,500 to be honest. It's from Oxfordshire originally, with its OY plate. Well, it looks all right, you know. £1,500. How is this possible? Now, I'm not a massive fan of the Touareg, as I've mentioned many times, but at that sort of money, I am quite excited. It's got its original VW plate on the front from Smith Knight Fay of Stockport. So I'm guessing this is a 2 or 3 owner car. No xenons, but it has got front fogs. We've got leather. I don't really know much about the spec on these, but it does look all right. The bodywork looks okay. Jimmy mentioned something about a bumper corner, but I can't see it. Just go and have a look around it, see what sort of toys it's got inside. Okay then, right. So we've got 2 keys, 1 and 2. Oh, bugger, just dropped one. But in typical VW fashion, the little silver hook thing has snapped off. So I can reshell that, that's not a big deal. So we can do that. There we go, the remote locking works, it's a good sign. Now, that rear tyre looks a little bit soft to me, and it's a land sale, look at that. I mean, for £1,500 I can't really knock it, can I? But that does look a bit low. There's the, can you see that? There's a little wear marker there, look. So there's only a couple of mil left on that one. but the bodywork looks all right. V6 badge. Oh, we've got matching plates. So they're the original plates. It's got rear parking sensors, no privacy. Actually not a bad spec, is it really? Quite a classy colour combination. I wouldn't have chosen it, to be honest, but it does look all right. Up front then we've got, I think this one's a set of tyres really, because that's quite low as well. Where's the wear marker? Yeah, there. That's right on the limit, that. So we're into 2 tyres, but with it being four-wheel drive, you need to match them up on each axle. Otherwise you can have four-wheel drive issues. Looks quite tidy though, that, doesn't it? Headlamps could do with a buff. The bonnet isn't all chippy, although it's hard to tell in this weather. That looks all right. Moving round to this tyre then. That is the same. It's all sort of cracked on the side wall there, and it's low. I mean, a set of tyres on this, you're talking 800 quid maybe. A few little scratches on the door there, but they would improve with a buff, I think. And then round here we've got a matching land sail that's, yeah, right on the limit again. So I think we're into 4 tyres here. What I could do, because of its value, I don't like doing this, but I could go to the local tyre place and try and get a decent set of part warns. Plane's loud, isn't it? I don't like the idea of part warns, but I don't really want to spend £1,000 on tyres on, you know, something of this value. It's not really worth doing, is it? Let's have a look inside then. No, it's auto locked on me. That key is dead to the world. It is the right key for the car though. Put that in my pocket. This one works, the broken one. There we go. So we've got full leather interior. Smells of cigarettes. And this is typical VW this era. All the black paints, well, all the black plastics are worn. Everywhere you look. Just looks messy, doesn't it? I know you can get these refurbished, but again, it's not really worth the hassle, is it? We've got a steering wheel there off a Bentley Continental. It's exactly the same. It is quite nice though, this. It's quite nice condition. Bit of mould on the seat belts where it's been parked up and not been used, I imagine. Don't know why they've been fastened. You know what? They were probably fastened for its MOT in September and nobody's sat here since. I suspect that's what's happened. Let's have a look in the boot then. How do you get in a boot on a Touareg? There we go. Stinks of cigarettes. What a rancid smell. No water in the wheel well there, that's a good sign. Full toolkit, all that sort of stuff. That's all good then. Got some stickers here from Smith Knight Fay when it had done 6,000, oh no, that's the code, isn't it? 2005 recall. Some sort of recall for something. Don't know what. Let's have a look under the engine then. Like I say, I think this is the VR6 engine. I assume it is. But I don't know. I know paint codes, just don't know engine codes. We could do with some new struts. They do work, but they are struggling a little bit. With a little gust of wind, that's... Oh no, they're alright. They're alright, right. Well, there is the old meaty V6. Everything's covered in plastic, so I can't really see an awful lot. But we know it has an engine at least. So my investment is looking safe. Well, does it? Oh yeah, we've got heated seats. There we go, perfect. Now you start it there for some reason. Capital, the wanted, no thank you. I do quite like the chunky gear lever on these. Everything's quite chunky. Look at the size of the switches, for example. Let's start this up then. I'm expecting an engine light on and an EPC light on. Typical VW fashion. But we're all right, I think. It's done 110,000 miles. We've got no warning lights on at all. Even the dash isn't all pixelated. You'd expect it to be, wouldn't you? Got plenty of fuel in it. Sounds quite good. Sounds nice, actually. Very good. Let's get these seats on. Put that one on as well, just to a bit of ambient heat. We've got about 11 pence there, so that's good news. That's broken. Right, well that's fine. Everything's just worn, I mean, as you'd expect, really. Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. It's got like a cup holder thing, or a big gulp, or a flask holder. Under here we've got... Still works. I am surprised. What else can I show you then? Let's crank this heat up, I think. It's freezing today. Freezing. In the glove compartment we've got a nice ice scraper. Clear off before you set off. Safer roads for Greater Manchester. Why does everything preach to you these days? Everything's got a message, hasn't it? We've got some Trebor dry mints. I detest those, to be honest. Like sucking on cement. Okay, do my windows work? 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. We've got these paddles here to change gear, just like a Bentley Continental. Let's look at the service history then. So you'd have thought this is quite a valuable car, this, when it was new, or it would have been. So the service history should be pretty good, I imagine, for the first probably 15 years until somebody lost interest with it. That's all its spec, by the way. Now there is a website where you can type all that in if you've got plenty of time on your hands, and it'll show you the spec. It's a chain-driven engine, this, I think. So hang on, let me turn that away so you don't see anybody's name or address. Oh, it's a Sport. It's a Touareg 3.6 V6 Sport. This is weird then. It must have been a pre-reg because it was sold by Smith Knight Fay at Green Lane, Stockport, the VW dealer, in September 03. 5th of September 03. But, right, it was a Volkswagen pre-reg, hence the Oxfordshire plate. That makes sense. Let's look at the history then. Service records. Right, there's some here. There is some. We've got one here at VW at 2,000 miles. That's in 2005. Oh, 12,000 miles, 2005. Then 2007, 25,000 miles. It had a dust and pollen filter. Then again in 2010 at 46. That's quite a long interval, isn't it? 20,000 miles. I wouldn't have left it that long. We're now in 2024. So that's 2011 at 53. Right. Then they haven't stamped the book here, but it has had a service, I suspect, in September 22. And then they've given them this sort of service sticker reminder thing. And that's it. Some recalls carried out. It always confuses me with cars like this. Why don't people look after them? You know, this is quite an expensive, valuable car, and then somebody just doesn't bother changing the oil. It doesn't make any sense to me. There are no goodies to be found here either, which is always a bit disappointing. We've got the lock and wheel nut there. Pop that down there, I think. That's all I can tell you, really. I suppose the next step is to get it out on the road and see how it drives. Should we do that? Let's. Okay then, right. First time in the Touareg. It's got a manual handbrake like an old Mercedes. Well, that engine sounds sweet though. Feels quite pokey as well. This will be, I imagine, 240 horsepower. This sort of era, you know, with a V6, they all were that kind of figure. It does feel quite responsive though. Quite pokey, got a bit of poke. How do we turn my wipers off? Nope, they sound loose. Nice Germanic quality there. I quite like the driving position of this. You sit up nice and high, king of the road. The seats feel nice and soft and luxurious. My heated seats are getting nice and warm. Does it have a heated steering wheel? What do those buttons do? Does it have a heated wheel like a Bentley or not? Where would you be? I'm going to say not then. No. Anyway. Should we sting it? She flies. For the money, this is quite a nice car, really. Apart from its ball tyres and its noisy wipers. And its freezing steering wheel. That isn't the car's fault though, I suppose, is it? It's just me being nesh. Well, it is quite a good spec as well. We've got electric seats. A few years ago, I'd have loved this. What should we do with it then? Because like I say, I've bought this and I've got no purpose for it whatsoever. But there's still a little bit of life left in it, isn't there? Where should we go with it? We could take it on a road trip, couldn't we, to meet some genuine Touareg people in North Africa. You let me go? No. Cheers, thank you. Oh yeah. I love a V6. They sound wicked. This is way quicker and sounds way better than you'd expect a Touareg to sound. They also did a 4.2 litre V8 and also a V12 diesel. Not V12, V10 diesel. V10 diesel. Most people went for the boring 2.5 diesel though, and later the 3 litre diesel, which were alright, but I'd always rather have petrol than diesel, to be honest. Well, it's getting up to temperature fine, as am I. Stereo works, that's all good. What else can I try? That's about it, isn't it, really? As an MOT till September, so I don't really, strictly speaking, need to do one, do I? We're only in March. What I'd like to do, though, because I'm not sure about the service history, is give it a full service, change the spark plugs, the whole lot. Get it up on a ramp and see how rotten it is underneath. I suspect not very. These weren't famous for being rotten. But yeah, the biggest thing really is tyres. What I should do really is head down to somewhere like Tyre Zone in Portwood, who I've used many, many times over the years, and see if they've got some, see if they can do me a deal. Maybe some decent part warns or something. It does feel quite solid over the bumps. It's not all loose and sloppy. I should probably service the gearbox as well, but where do you start and stop with something like this? What am I going to do with this car? Where do I take it? What's the point? I think that's going to be my first stop. I'm going to go to Tyre Zone in Portwood, see what sort of deal they'll do me. Then I think once that's done, I need to run it to my mechanics, get them to check it over, give it a full service, maybe give it a clean MOT then, so we've got 12 months. And then I don't know what do I do with it then? I've mentioned this to you many times before, but I always buy a car and then try and imagine a scenario for it, you know, and try and keep hold of it. But I'm running out of scenarios. Anyway, let's go down to Tyre Zone and sort these tyres out, shall we? Vamos. I can't imagine this being great on fuel, actually. Let's see. Let me go through this menu. We've got a quarter of a tank and it's telling me I've got 125 miles to empty. Don't know what that means. How do we go back? Ah, there we go, right. My current MPG is 25. That's an instantaneous one, that's not very accurate, is it? Let me reset my MPG thing, because I imagine this old 3.2 V6 in what's quite a heavy car will be doing about 20 average, won't it? Currently, as I'm rolling downhill, it's doing 60. It's quite impressive, isn't it? Straight away, I like this more than I thought I was going to, and I think that's just down to the price. In my mind, the fact that it's cheap just makes me like it. I don't know why. Probably because I'm weird. I've got the MPG up to 101. So, if we can just keep going downhill forever without using the accelerator, this would be quite a cheap car to run, wouldn't it? There was a bit of a clunk there. Don't know where that came from. Oy. I know this isn't relevant to this video, guys, but over there is my 2007 BMW X5. And that's very good on fuel at the moment because it's broken. Hasn't turned a wheel in about 2 weeks. Anyway, right, let's head to the tyre place. Let's get on our way, shall we? And we're back in the cheap VW Touareg. I've been away for a few days, so I can't quite remember where we were up to. I think before I went away, oh yeah, that's right, my brother went down to Tyre Zone over in Portwood in Stockport and got 4 decent part-worn tyres. I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest, but it was the only way that I could keep this within budget. So we've got a pair of decent Goodyears on the front, and we've got a pair of decent Continentals on the back. And I'm stuck here in the middle with you. Sorry, more dad jokes there. Then while I was away, he picked it up from there and took it down to my mechanics, and I left it for a full service and check over. So it's had new spark plugs, new filters, all that sort of stuff. I didn't bother with a fresh MOT because it's got quite a long one on it already, so I thought, well, that'll do. I've just got it back to work now after a mini valet, which cost me £15, and photographed it, and I've got it advertised for £2,495, which is an awful lot of car for the money, isn't it? We have this package with Auto Trader where, because we pay so much for the advertising in the first place, they let us have unlimited cars under 2,495 or under 2.5 grand. So we're fully stocked up at the moment. So this one at 2,495 is a free ad. Sounds really good, actually. Get over, clown. I think this really benefited from its fresh service. Feels way more responsive. Driving it like that, of course, won't help with its fuel consumption, which is poor, to say the least. It isn't all good news though, because my mechanic found quite a few things wrong with it. Nothing major, but I could have massively overspent had I corrected them all, and I haven't done. So what I'm going to do with you now is park up somewhere scenic, and it's a nice beautiful day. Not quite as nice as where I was yesterday, but nevertheless it's all right. And I'll talk you through exactly what my mechanic found. Now, I've listed all these points in the advert just for full transparency. I don't want anyone accusing me of ripping them off. But yeah, I think for 2.5 grand, someone's going to get a fairly decent car. It sort of drives like an old ML, this. It's quite crashy. Feels like an old-fashioned 4x4. There are lots of little rattles and knocks and vibrations. I suppose that's to be expected, isn't it, for something of this age? My aircon works, though. Oh yes, the old VR6. Right, well, here we'll do then. Lovely, right in the mud after having it cleaned. Now, if you remember, whack it in park. If you remember, I paid £1,500 for this car, so 1,500. The tyres cost me 250, which I didn't think was too bad because they've got plenty of tread left on them. Now, oh, we've got £15 for a mini valet. Don't forget that. Now, my mechanic did a check over. Oil filter, £8.50. Air filter, £12.99. Pollen filter, £14.12. Spark plugs, £65.80. Oil, £55.93. And labour, £100. So my total is £308.81, which means this car currently owes me £2,073. So if I can sell it as it is for 2.5 grand, there's a few £100 profit. So it isn't the end of the world. But let me just go through this list with you. VW, oh, they've called it a Touareg. VW Touareg, near side front bottom arm, rear bush loose, inner offside front play in the rack end, front pads are low, front discs worn, rear pads low, rear discs worn, rear anti-roll bar D-bushes worn, water leak from housing at rear of engine, gearbox leak from oil pan, and front flexi perished. And that's it. So it isn't the end of the world, that, but if I wanted this to pass an MOT with no advisory items, you'd be talking, off the top of my head, I don't know, hundreds of pounds are there. Hundreds of pounds. And I couldn't ask any more for this car. If I did all those things, it's not like I could put it up at 4 grand because nobody would give me that for it. So I think the best thing to do is keep it cheap and just try and sell it to somebody that knows they're buying a 22-year-old car, basically. Somebody that's going to use it, perhaps out there. That's my plan anyway. We shall see. So, I think that's about it, guys. As always, testing its 4-wheel drive ability there, aren't I? In case you want some closure on the Touareg, I ended up massively overspending on it. I did a second video with that on the main channel, so maybe check that out. But it had all sorts. Gearbox service, engine service, tyres. I think it was a leaking water pump or something. It had some sort of coolant leak. I fixed that as well. And in the end, I sold it. I think I got £3,000 for it, which was more or less money back. So all in all, not a profitable deal, but it didn't cost me a fortune. Speaking of not profitable deals, let's go to the next one. This is a very cheap L322 that I bought for just £1,250. Now, this was an old 4.4 litre V8 Vogue. And as we've established, I can never say no to a cheap Range Rover. So here's what happened. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, in the words of Britney Spears, oops, I did it again. Let me tell you how, and more importantly, why I bought a 20-year-old Range Rover. I've recently followed a guy on Instagram who bought a cheap Range Rover. It was quite a neglected example and it had lots of bits of blingy chrome here and there, and he's slowly making it totally original. I love this sort of stuff, so I followed him and I've been watching his progress with interest. Every time he posts a before and after picture, I can't help but think, I fancy having a go at that myself. So, you know what's coming, don't you? Lo and behold, I present to you my late 2002, early 2003 52 reg Range Rover Vogue 4.4 litre V8. I got an email from a YouTube viewer last week asking if I wanted to buy his old Range Rover. He said he didn't need it anymore, he wasn't using it, so he wanted to sell it, but he didn't relish the prospect of all the tyre kickers and time wasters. He knew that I'm a Range Rover addict, so he emailed me. Honestly, I'm like the Battersea Dogs home, but for old Range Rovers. I asked him to send me some photographs, and it looked nice and original. Most Range Rovers of this era are smothered in cheap aftermarket chrome accessories from eBay. Either that or they've got the wrong wheels on, or black wheels, or a 3D reg plate. Most of them are just garbage. So I was really pleasantly surprised with this one. It's almost totally original. I was also pleased to hear that although this isn't my favourite engine, it's the 4.4 litre BMW V8 with, I think it's 272 brake horsepower. In fact, I don't know why I'm trying to play it cool. I know that it's 272 brake horsepower. I'm not a fan of this particular motor because it can suffer with timing chain issues, but again, I was pleased to hear that there weren't any. I was also over the moon to discover that it's still running on petrol. Nobody's LPG converted it. I'm not a big fan of LPG. Most mechanics don't want to work on it, there's nowhere around here that I can buy it anyway, so what's the point? Bear in mind at this point I hadn't actually met the previous owner, it was all done by email, but I could just tell that he was genuine. He genuinely looked after it. And that matters so much with this sort of thing. That's the most important thing, really. He told me that he'd spent a small fortune on it and it had everything that it ever needed over the years. I noticed from the photographs that it had 4 matching necks and tyres, the wheels looked alright, and it had loads of service history and both sets of keys. Just looked really honest. Fast forward then to this morning, the previous owner drove it over to the garage for me and I bought it. So buying an old car like this is about as risky as it gets. I think we all know that, so you do have to be quite switched on about it. There are lots and lots of lemons out there. Now, regarding the price, I asked the previous owner how much he wanted for it, and he said, well, I'd be quite happy with £1,000 really. So I thought, well, that's just too cheap. I asked him whether the private plate was staying with it, and he said, yeah, I've got no use for it. It came with it when I bought it, so you can have it. So I offered him £1,250, and he went with it. Now, I know that sounds ridiculously cheap, but it's such a limited market, this. There aren't many nutters out there who'd want to run around in something like this. A 21-year-old 4.4 litre V8. So it's quite a small club, a club of which I think I'm the honorary president. Anyway, it is a very limited market. I mean, I'll put the question to you then, what is it worth? A couple of grand? I've got no idea really. As nice as it is, and it has been maintained well, it does have a few issues, as you'd expect from any 20-year-old car. First and foremost is the air conditioning. It doesn't work. And on a nice 16-degree day like today, it's quite close in here. Feels a bit like being on the tube at rush hour. Quite clammy. The bodywork's okay, so it doesn't need a good buff, but it does need some new reg plates. You might be able to advise me actually, I don't know whether to leave this private plate on or take it off and just have the original number. The old piffy reg doesn't really mean anything to me, and it might look quite nice with its original 5.2 plate on. The front and back bumpers have been painted before, you can tell. In fact, on the front it started to peel, so one of these days I will get them repainted, but it's not a job I need to tackle straight away. One thing I do need to do straight away is remove the privacy glass. I'm not a big fan of window tints, especially on something like this. I think this would look far nicer and classier without them. What else then? Oh, the BMW era stereo has got a couple of lines through it, so I need to send that off and get that refurbished. The same thing actually happened on my old E46 M3, and I think it cost about 100 quid. You take it out, send it to some company, they refurb it and send it you back. So I'll have to scout round and see who I used last time and see if they're up for the job. I might buy some leather dye for the steering wheel and try and restain it because it's a little bit faded in places, but overall it is in really good shape. The wheel arches aren't rotten, they're all pretty good. It's got a little bit of chrome trim on the back which I need to remove because I don't really like chrome. I think I'll run it to my mechanics and let them just check it over, and while it's up in the air I'll get them to wax oil on the side of it just to protect it. And I think that's... oh, actually one more fault. The powerful mirrors don't work at all, which I think could just be a switch. Now unfortunately it's all part of this master switchboard there, so I'll have to replace that. But again, I'll look on eBay. I can't imagine it being too expensive. And that, I think now, I've said this twice now, but I think that's about it. So let me crack on with the jobs and I'll be in touch shortly. Oh yes, and we're back in the old V8 Vogue. I'm getting to know this car now quite well and I love it. Absolutely love it. Since we last spoke, I've had the window tints removed. I did some of it myself, but my mate Paul from Pro Tints, he came over and did the rest. And I decided to put the original plates on it. So I've taken off the Piffy plate. Piffy! I just thought that private plate cheapened it. I mean, I've got nothing to hide, it's an old car. Why not show its 52 reg? It's actually a January 2003, but on a 52 plate. Now, 02 is when they started making the L322, so it looks like a first model year. It looks so much better with no privacy glass. There's just something about a dark coloured L322 with a light interior with no tints. Just looks really regal, really majestic. I took off the piece of chrome trim off the boot lid and ordered a silver one from Powerful UK. Sadly though, they didn't have one in the same Brunel grey as the badges, so it does stand out a little bit. I might get that painted. Still, it looks better than the chrome. I also ordered a new rear light for it, a new reversing light. I slammed the tailgate shut and noticed the reverse light was broken at the top, so I ordered a new one of those. That was £55 and fitted that. Whilst I was doing that, I noticed that the near side tailgate cable had actually snapped, so I've ordered a new pair of those. I was surprised how cheap they were. They were only 12 quid for a new pair. For now, rather than having it sitting outside the body shop for weeks whilst I find time to paint it, I've instead just touched in the marks. It isn't the best job, but from a distance, looks a whole lot better. We had some BMW black touch-up paint, so I figured that wouldn't be a million miles away from the original Land Rover colour. Don't forget, when this Range Rover was in development, it was still owned by BMW. I've booked in the aircon guy to come out to the garage and top up the gas. I'm not too confident about that though. I've got a feeling it's got a dodgy condenser or a split pipe, but we'll try. I'll try with the gas, and if it all leaks out, then I'll have to correct it. On a day like today though, I really do need some aircon. Driving here with the windows down, sweating. On the bright side though, it means you can hear that V8 engine better. Listen to this. Such a nice noise, that BMW V8. I can't believe how much I love this car. It just feels like a proper classic. And if I continue to drive it sensibly and look after it well, there's no reason it shouldn't last. It's now nicer to drive actually because I'm not looking through purple wrinkly window tints. I still haven't found anybody to repair that sat-nav screen. I'm still looking, but if you know of anybody, let me know in the comments below, or email me, matt@highpeakautos.com. Well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's about it. In case you're wondering, I've still got that Range Rover and use it on a regular basis. In fact, just yesterday I had a service MOT done, and it passed its MOT with not a single advisory item. It's just a really nice car, that. I paid £1,250 for it. I've spent a lot on it, but it's now got working aircon, the heated seats work. It's just a really nice car. I've also had all the paintwork done, so it looks as clean as you like. You'd never believe it done 144,000 miles. And yeah, I think that's about it. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. I'll leave the links below. And yeah, cheers guys. See you next time.